All right, friends, welcome into episode 150 of the Leaning into Leadership podcast. Man, I cannot think of a place I would rather be with episode 150 taking place than here with my buddies Dominic Armano and Todd Bloomer. Fellas, this is going to be a lot of fun this week. We've got a lot of great stuff to talk about. As always, our mid-month podcast with the three of us talking ed leadership and anything else that may happen to come up. But let's just jump right in, fellas. Welcome to episode 150. I'm stoked to be with you guys today.
Hey, Darrin. First of all, on behalf of myself and Dom, and I think Dom's going to jump in on it too, kudos to you for 150 episodes of the podcast, Leaning into Leadership. The drum that you've consistently beat, the message that you've put out, the consistency, the assistance has been appreciated and noted. And just kudos to you for never giving up. In the words of Sir Winston Churchill himself. Congratulations, Darrin.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing. I can't believe we're here. I can't believe we're on the 150 episode with you. I think that's such a milestone, and that's amazing. But I remember when you made the announcement that you were starting the Leaning into Leadership podcast. It was the end of I think you did like a live thing with Road to Awesome. It was like in December.
Yeah,
what was that,
pep
like
rally.
2-3 years ago? The pep rally, like 2-3 years ago, and you made the announcement, and here you are 150 episodes later, just absolutely killing it and putting everyone on the road to awesome with you and the rest of the RTA family. So it's amazing. Congratulations, Darrin.
I appreciate that, guys. Yeah, I like that you throw it back to the pep rally. I was thinking about that just the other day. So that was January of 2022, and the original goal with the podcast, honestly, was to just further, I guess, develop that footprint that Road to Awesome now clearly has in the leadership space. And to have an opportunity to build more of a platform to pour into leaders. And over time, if you guys remember way back to the very beginning, if you were listening at the very beginning, I talked about how this podcast was going to be me doing solo episodes, and every now and again I would have a guest. And about 7 or 8 episodes in, I'd had 2 or 3 guests, and I never looked back. I think I've done 4 or 5 solo episodes since. But I have just fallen in love with the conversations that I get to have with so many different leaders in so many different walks of life too. I mean, it's not just educational leaders, right? I mean, we've got some episodes coming up here fairly soon with a real estate investor, with an entrepreneur. Just all kinds of stuff. Somebody in the software space. Because great leadership is great leadership, right? You guys know that that's something you talk about the drum that I've been banging on. That's the one right there, right? Great leadership is great leadership. It doesn't matter where it
Darrin,
you're going to learn from it.
Your Father's Day episode with your daughter, I thought was very special. As parents, as we all are, that's such a cool space that you got to be interviewed by her. And I just thought that was a great episode, but a very touching episode, because it also, as we talk about family, it was really, really kudos to you on that episode.
Yeah, that was great. You took the words right out of my mouth. That was the one I was thinking of when you were talking about it's not just educational leadership. And I thought that was really special. I really enjoyed listening to that one and watching it. It was very cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that, guys. That one was a lot of fun. And big shout out to Liz for doing that episode. And, when I first started thinking about doing it, and that was actually, I was thinking episode 150, and, having somebody interview me is what the original thought was. And it was her and her mom. So shout out to Jess too. What if Liz interviews you and it's the Father's Day episode? And it's like, man, there's no way you can't do that. Right. So,
well,
and
Darrin,
I'm super proud of her,
Tell your daughter that as any great educator and leader, if she wants a job in Texas, I have openings that I will hire her for. She clearly articulated, I know she works in a different space, but if she's thinking about education, I do have openings in San Antonio if she wants to move here.
There you go. Always
looking
recruiting.
for
I
great
love
people. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There might just be 1 or 2 openings at Churchill High School right now. So
There might be.
yeah,
There might be.
that's right. That's right.
Actually, we
Well,
only
you
have
know,
3 right now.
you find great people and you figure out a seat for them on your bus. That's what matters, right?
This is true.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, I appreciate all the love for the podcast and for the work that we're doing here at RTA. Today, what I want to get into, I mean, it's July, and you know, we're at that point in time. I've been hitting it pretty hard with content over the last week or so about you're the new leader. You landed the job. We talked about that quite a bit those last couple episodes leading up to July, right? About how do you go get the job and what are the things that you're looking for? Well, now you got the job. Now what? Right? I mean, I remember my first, couple of days. I got the job on June 30th, and July 3rd, I'm sitting in the office staring at the walls like, okay, now what? And I could have used that real clear blueprint, if you will, that Todd Bloomer has for us. And folks, I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit. Todd's got a brand new book coming out through Road to Awesome, The Blueprint. And it is all about not just how to land the job, but then what happens when you get started? What happens when they hand you the keys and say, go lead your school? So if you guys are good with this, where I'd like to kind of go with this episode is maybe now we're going to put Todd right into the hot seat. And Dom, I think you and I ought to just start firing some questions at him about that. Hey, I'm brand new in the role. What do I do here? What do I do there? And maybe some stuff that comes straight out of the blueprint. What do you think about that, Dom?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I know I am eagerly anticipating the release of the blueprint. Todd has promised me an autographed copy, so I'm pretty stoked about that. And again, I think, I'm the first one to say that we should all be changing and learning and adapting. And so I think that's great because there are a lot of new leaders out there. And I think Todd has a lot of insight to share with us about all of his successes. And, I know he's mentioned the blueprint several times on the show, and just knowing him, the Bloomer triangle of success. I'm excited to hear more about that. So yeah, I think we should definitely put Todd in the hot seat here, and let's see how he and his book hold up.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, I'll go ahead and go first. So, Todd, I know you talk about quite a bit in the blueprint. You certainly talk about the importance of having a clear plan. You talk about the importance of, what that first 90 days looks like on the job. So, here we are mid-July. I've been on the job for about a week and a half. Fortunately, I don't have any teachers in the building yet. I don't have students in the building. What is some recommendations you would have for those new leaders between now and when the teachers do start to show up, when the students do start to show up? Where are you going to get the most for your efforts at that point in time?
Yeah, great question. And thank you, Darrin, for allowing me the space to be able to talk about the book. It's been a long time coming. And Dom, to your question, it's probably more failures than it is successes. And so it's a journey in which I'm sharing with that. Honestly speaking, I'll touch on what Dom brought up, the Bloomer triangle of success. And honestly, I think right now in mid-July, sitting in your office, the office is set up, you're ready to rock. At some point, you got to reach out to those irreplaceable teachers on your campus and start to get an idea and a pulse about what's going on. And one of the things that I think is very highly successful, gives you a lot of bang for your buck, is setting up one-on-one meetings with every staff member that you can. And there's a lot of time in July where teachers have some time off where they could come up to the school to be able to meet with you and talk with you. Or there's teachers that are your your instructional leaders, your assistant principals. I would sit down with them and I would craft 4 or 5 questions that I think are important questions to you. What do we value on this campus? What are things that we have to continue to do? What are some areas that we might be below average we want to look at? What are some goals? What advice would you give me? And then I would really, really listen to what these leaders what shared with me. I'd listen to the good, I'd listen to the bad, I'd take great notes, and I'd look for themes that have developed over the course of 7, 8, 9 teachers. And I'd look at those teachers that have been on your campus for 15, 20 years, those teachers that are your career leaders, I'd look at those brand new teachers also, those brand new teachers that just survived in year one. What's going well. And I would take not just teachers, but then I would reach out to your PTA, your parent groups, your band boosters, your athletic boosters, any of those parent groups that you have. And I'd ask those same questions. Why did you choose Churchill High School? Why did you choose, Sayville to be able to bring your kids to this school? What's the draw? And then where are areas that you feel we're average? How do we do in communication? How do we do in reaching all kiddos? What is the focus? And then I would try to panel a student group. There's so many student groups that are on our campus right now, from band to ROTC to athletics to other kids that are involved, speech and debate, dance, you name it, kids that are involved. And all you got to do is ask a kid, and they'll share with you exactly what's going well on the campus and areas that you need to focus on. And so I think right now, one of the biggest bang for your bucks, and really honestly, a very filling activity that I do twice a year with as many staff members as I can. What's going well? What do we need to work on? What advice do you have for me? And where do we go from here? And then take that information, take it back to your leadership team and say, hey, this is the overwhelming themes that I've heard from parents, students, and staff. Leadership team, are we on the same board with this? Do we see this? And then really from that data and that insight that you have, driving your plan, your back to school week plan for what you have. Because one of the things that I learned in my first year as a principal is the school isn't named after you. So whatever you come in with and your ideas, they may be totally out in left field. And you want to be able to ensure you have good insight and good data. And the only way you get that is by asking people, how are we doing? What do we need to do well? Where do we need to focus on?
Well, I mean, that's amazing. I mean, you've highlighted all that is what you said the first 90 days, the first week. I mean, that's amazing information. I mean, I'm just thinking back, and here's a question I have for you. Can you talk a little bit about, I don't know if maybe this is in the blueprint or if this is just administrative experience, but so you gather this information, you meet with your leadership team. Can you talk a little bit about creating this plan moving forward for opening week? What if there are members of your leadership team that don't necessarily have the same vision that you have? And what would you do to support that? Or how would you then kind of go and still implement that? And again, if that's not in the blueprint, I apologize, but I think there are many new leaders out there that would love to hear your insight, Todd.
I think data drives everything. And so honestly, gathering that data to be able to say, here's what the staff feels, here's what the parents feel, here's what the students feel. And within the Bloomer Triangle of Success, I talk a lot about voice, but not vote. And so ultimately, you are the leader of your campus and you are charged with casting the vision of where your ship is going. Obviously, everybody needs to be on board. You hope that the leadership team that you have is on board. You hope that they're committed to who you are. And so I think one of the first things I would do with after I gather that data and I go to my leadership team, and let's say there's some folks that are not on board with where we want to go or what we want to do. And sometimes those are hard conversations and hard decisions, because a lot of times when you're talking about sharing data and someone's pushing back, that just means there's more work that has to be done. So I think getting to know the people that you work with and then letting them get to know you. One of the things that I share in the blueprint is that first year, it's make or break. And my first year was very, very stressful and difficult because I failed to communicate my why. And so on that leadership team, I have to make sure that everybody understands what is my North Star, where am I going with this, what are my core values of leadership. And then whether it be coming through and developing our team norms and vision as a leadership team. And so simultaneously, Dom, I would say to any new leader that's out there, as I'm gathering insight from students, parents, and teachers, I'm also working on making sure that I'm crafting my core values and our team's vision and mission statement as a leadership team. Where are we going to go? And it's okay if there's people that disagree, but when we close the doors and we walk out the hallway, we all got to be on the same page. And so sitting down with people and just saying, why are we in education? Does all truly mean all? Are we working to make sure that this campus is known for what we want it to be known for? And then, where do you see yourself, assistant principal Dominic, where do you see yourself? Do you want to be a principal? Like, if you want to be a principal, here's steps for where we need to get to. Here's the data that we're seeing from our staff. I've got 150 teachers on my campus, and if the overwhelming data from the staff is X, then we got to, if we want the ship to go north, we got to be on board with the teachers. And so I'd say simultaneously sitting down with your leadership team, crafting your mission and vision statement, making sure you guys are on the same page. Then I would say taking the data, and then I would say sitting down sometimes and saying, this is the way it's going to go. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you're the captain of the ship. You know, like we have to be able to get on board with this, and you have to be able to look people in the eye and say, Dom, are you with me? Can you get behind this? And not because Todd wants it to, because this is what our community wants. This is what our community expects, our parents, our staff. And the group that's often the most forgotten is our students. And at a high school, Darrin and I both were at secondary, 18-year-old kids, they're at school with us 8 hours a day. And in 3 or 4 months after graduation, they're either in the military, working, or in college. They've got a voice in their education. Maybe not a vote, but a voice. And so it's very important that we gather that information, take it back, and then working behind the scenes with the people that we have.
Yeah. Well, I think you hit some real key pieces right there. And there's one I want to go a little bit deeper into. I think often, I was just on a call a little while ago. I'm working with a secondary leadership team. As this episode is dropping, I'm working with the secondary leadership team. And one of the things that we've been discussing is getting everyone all on the same page. And a big part of that you talked about is knowing what, as the leader of your campus, what do you really care about? What are your core values? What are the things that are important to you? What are you looking for every day? And most importantly, what's your vision for your school? Certainly, if you don't have that clarity, there's no way your team, nor your teachers, nor your students, nor your community are going to be working in the same direction. How do you recommend it? And what are maybe some steps you do with your leadership team? I know you're actually going to be doing some retreat work with a leadership team there in the San Antonio area soon. What are some steps you recommend that leaders take to just focusing on that first tier, that core leadership team, whether that's a surrounding group of assistant principals, instructional coaches, maybe it's lead teachers, whatever your structure might be, that first tier of your leadership team? How do we go from this is my vision to this is our vision?
Yeah, it's in the blueprint. I talk a lot about early failures in my career. And most early leaders fail to articulate their vision, their mission statement. They fail to communicate. And I was no exception to that. I was failing miserably because I wasn't straight with who I was. I wasn't straight with making sure we understood that. And that took year 2, and that took reflection on my part to be able to articulate that. So part of the blueprint is the journey to say, I don't want you to fall in the trap I fell in, the quicksand that I fell in. But it happens. It can happen on a Tuesday, and all of a sudden you lost it. So I would say the best structure and protocol I've used with my leadership team to craft the vision and the mission statement at Churchill High School is a 1, 2, 4, 8 type of model. And so the easiest, and it's what I'm going to use with the little bit of retreat work that I'm going to do with the school, Darrin, that you mentioned here in town. Everybody's going to sit there with a journal. I think journaling is really important in this process. And in that journal, I'm going to say, okay, let's make sure we get our core values. And that's who you are. And we're going to share our core values. And then where do we want to go and how do we want to get there? Mission and vision. And so what we've done and what we're going to do with this is, okay, everybody, let's write down what is our mission statement? Who are we at Churchill High School? Who are we? Okay. And then take that statement and pair up with somebody else. And so, for example, I would have a statement and I would work with Dom. And I would say, here's my statement. He would share his statement. We would say, hey, you know what, Dom, your statement's much better. I can get behind your statement, or let's combine both statements and then come together. The idea is I take a statement and then 2 people get together and now they own, I'll say own, or they can stand behind their combined statement. Once we have wrestled and worked out that, the group of 2 will now join with a group of 4. The group of 4, then we have 2 that we agree on, and we do the same thing. We wrestle back and forth. We wordsmith it. We wordcraft it. We decide, okay, us 4 now can support this one statement. And we keep doing it until there's basically 2 left. And then the group comes together and half the group is supporting one statement. The other half is supporting another statement. And from there, we then decide, you know what, this is the one that all 5 of us, 10 of us, 12 of us, we can stand behind. So we've given ownership, we've given voice, and now we can all say at Lincoln Avenue Elementary School, we have decided this is our mission statement for what we have. I do feel another step is really important, and this is where I failed early on, is I do think after you develop that mission statement, we're all fired up, we're excited about it. We have to then talk about defeating behaviors of that mission statement and what would happen if people are not living up to that. I think we fail. We design a great mission statement, we put it up on the wall, we get a banner, maybe we put it on our letterhead, but then all of a sudden we don't act the way, our behaviors don't indicate what we just all agreed to. So after we agree to this, we come together because we're on a high right now of like, hey, we're coming together as a team, we've bought in. Now, what are behaviors that could work against what we've just created? And then what is our common language that we're going to use if I notice, Darrin, that you're not living up to what we just agreed to? And we have to have, that goes back to creating norms right before we get there. Like, it's not personal, but you know what, Darrin, one of our norms is we're going to start on time, and you showed up 5 minutes late. Well, how do we say something to you without ticking you off and without, so how do we handle that? So I think once you've done that activity and once you've crafted voice of the whole group, everybody feels like they had a say in it. So this is a great protocol to be able to say, hey, we've got 5, 10, 15, 20 people on our extended leadership team. How the heck are we all going to come up with one? Well, here this protocol gave voice and ownership to everybody. And as we walk out of there, we now have a mission or vision statement crafted. And so I think that is the easiest way to start in year one for your team to be able to go there. So finding out your core values as a leader, crafting norms, how the behavior is going to go, and then doing a 1, 2, 4, 8, 12, whatever numbers you have. And it may not be equal in the numbers, but giving voice to be able to craft that. And I think in like a morning, you could have something you're pretty proud of as you walk out of there.
I believe the overarching theme you're talking about is really giving voice to the members of your community, whether it's your leadership team, whether it's parents, or just the Churchill community in general. And I know you're a big proponent of giving voice to the students, and you've said that before. Can you talk a little bit about how you do that? Is there a mechanism or a protocol in place? Is it like, do you sit with students around a round table? I know in previous episodes you've talked about a bench that you sit outside at. I mean, is that your mechanism for communicating with students? How do you do that, and how do you make sure that they're truly communicating with you without being like, oh man, I'm talking to the principal and I don't want to say something wrong?
I think that's a great question, and I think visibility is the key. You can't principal from your office if you want to solicit voice. I firmly believe a principal from elementary to high school should start their day where the most amount of kids come onto campus. And I think setting the tone at that, whether it be, a gate, door, you name it, I think that should be where a principal starts. And so if you want to solicit honest feedback, you have to be an honest person, and you have to be someone that is willing to talk to kids. It's easy at high school, and Darrin knows this, to talk to the drum major, the quarterback of the football team. It's easy to talk to the kid that's going to MIT or Harvard. Those kids are easy to connect with. And you have to be able to, as a principal, connect with all kids. The kid that just got the brand new tattoo that is begging for someone to ask him about the tattoo. The kid that just got the fresh new Adidas or On Clouds or Hopus sneakers and is begging someone to say, hey, ask me about these sneakers. So I think one of the things that I do that has benefited me is I'm visible. I make sure that I start my day where the most kids come in. First period, I go to a red bench, and I meet my head football coach there about 20 minutes into the period. And I sit out there, I do some work on my iPad, I drink some coffee, I talk to teachers, I talk to kids. I just make sure that I'm visible. People can come and meet with me out there, and I love the fact I'm able to be outside as I go there. But every passing period, I'm outside, and I'm not just standing there. I'm interacting with kids as I kind of go. Lunch duty, I'm interacting with kids. But then games, events, concerts, I make sure I interact with kids as we kind of go. So you set the stage as being visible. You set the stage as asking, Dom, how you doing? And if they stop, then you figure out and do whatever you need to be able to figure out what's going on. Because if you get a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old, an 18-year-old to stop and say, Mr. Bloomer, can you help me? The answer has to be yes. And I have to stop what I'm doing to be able to help for someone. Because if I say no or I blow them off, they're never going to ask again. So I think the principal, one of their jobs is making sure they are visible. And then you're also modeling for your staff interacting with kids. Nothing would break my heart more than one of my children walking on the campus, walking by an adult, and nobody saying hi to them, even if they didn't know them. So I try to make sure that every kid at Churchill thinks I know their name. 2,400 kids, I don't know everybody's name, but I want them to think that I know their name. So I do that. And then the aspect becomes, you just ask, Dom, how are things going? Dom, how's science? Dom, you got a new math teacher. How's she doing? So you ask and you listen. Those are informal ways that you're able to kind of go about what's going on. And I use connecting in relationships with them. Fantasy football is a great way to connect with a lot of kids. So stopping at a lunch table and saying, all right, guys, I got a dilemma about who I'm going to start at quarterback. So that has nothing to do with education, but everything to do with connecting with kids. Then when I see someone that participated in the band concert, in the school play, is making sure they feel just like they scored a touchdown on a Friday night in Texas. Then from there, I convene a couple things that are more formal ways to go about doing that. We do a lunch bunch once in 9 weeks. I have the counselors pick kids from lunch. We buy pizza. We eat with them. We have a little structured questions. What's going well? What things do you want to tell the principal? And then after that, I always challenge the kids to say, what's an area that we're average on this campus and you want to work on to improve? And that's where you get the most buyback from any high school kid is, hey, you know what? Right now, we don't have enough recycling on the campus. So what can we do about that? And then you get ownership. And then the key becomes if you open the door and say we want to do something, like I got to make sure I'm doing it. If I'm talking about, hey, we're going to open up on a Saturday and do a campus cleanup, I got to be there opening up on a Saturday to do a campus cleanup. And then one of my favorite things to do is if I pop into a classroom and I pop in and there's a sub there or I need to cover for a couple minutes, I say, okay, guys, principal's here. Anything you want to share with me that you want to, you got the principal, you got my ear. And I share a story in the blueprint that was one of the most humbling and revealing experiences of my life as a principal. I stopped in a class. I said just that. A girl raises her hand and says, you know what? The school Instagram account, I don't think it supports girls' athletics as much as it does boys' athletics. And you want to talk about a shot to the heart because you know who runs the school Instagram account is me. And I took that. I was like, oh, my goodness, I didn't feel like that was the case. But perception is reality. And that was her perception. And she had enough guts to say that. I can only imagine how many kids on my campus said, you know what, Bloomer loves football or baseball or, wrestling or you name it, but he's not supporting girls' basketball. And so I had to make sure that I took that, didn't get upset by it, but had to make sure that my actions mirrored what I was doing. And so I went to every girls' basketball game after that, made sure that she knew that I was supported there. And so I think there's informal and formal ways that you can structure conversation on campus. But at the end of the day, you have to listen. And the feedback may not be what you want it to hear, but it's feedback, and you have to do something with it. And the thing I learned first year, and I share it in the blueprint, is my first year, I was like, wait a second, like this feedback is negative. It can't be about me. I'm a good person. I'm a good principal. Why would someone say something negative about me? And I had to realize not everybody likes the principal. If I wanted to make everybody happy, what does Nick Saban say? Go sell some ice cream. We'll kind of go from there. So I think formal and informal ways, but I think making sure you listen and then taking that feedback and then doing something actionable with it is key.
I'll tell you one of the pieces I'm taking away from that, and there's so much good stuff in there. But one of the pieces I'm taking away, I used to have this conversation regularly. So one other large high school in the county where I was a high school principal, that the other high school's principal and I would get together for breakfast once a month. We'd go sit and we would, talk about what was happening in our schools, talk about what's happening in our communities. We would talk about stuff that had nothing to do with school. He and I had actually been assistant principals together, so we had a really good relationship. We still do actually have a really good relationship. But he would say frequently, and I love the phrase, and it's just been resonating listening to you talk about what he would call the hidden curriculum in our schools. And a big piece of hidden curriculum that you just talked about is helping students advocate for themselves, be able to communicate with others, be comfortable speaking to adults. You said it really well. It's super simple to talk with the kid who's going to Harvard. right? I mean, those kids are very comfortable advocating for themselves. The quarterback is comfortable advocating for himself typically. But like you mentioned, the kid with the brand new tattoo, we got to give those kids those avenues. We got to give them the opportunity to speak to us, and not just about the tattoo, but maybe the tattoo is the opening of the door so that eventually they come to you and say, hey, Bloomer, I'm concerned about this. Or, hey, you know what? I just heard this and I think you guys need to know. Knowing that they have this avenue, this conduit to speaking to somebody in a position like the building principal. So I love that so much, because there are so many different hidden curriculum within our schools, but helping our students to just learn how to advocate for themselves, how to speak with others, how to just have a casual conversation, how to communicate, right? It's just huge. I really appreciate that you went there with that. I want to shift in a little bit different direction, because again, we're thinking about that brand new in the role. We've talked about, here are these different things that you should focus on, and here are these different ways to get ready, all of which is important. But your teachers are going to roll in the door. Day one is going to happen. So where do I start to shift, or how do I balance that, Todd, between I'm working my 90-day plan, I'm building, support, I'm gaining information from all these different groups, and okay, I got to plan day one. I got to plan day 1 through 5 when staff is here. How do I do that? How do I find the balance with that?
It's a great question, and it's always a dilemma, because you want to balance, in my opinion, and we talk about it in the blueprint, you want to balance bringing people back, getting people excited about the school year, but also sitting down and saying, okay, here's the data and here's where we need to go. And I do think that the principal has to be the chief tone setter of the campus. Like, it is your job to make sure you set the tone for what 2024-25 is going to look like on your campus. Now, at Churchill High School, we have a great instructional leadership team. And so as we've kind of talked throughout the year about how do you close out one year and how do you open up another year simultaneously at the same time, we started working in May about what August was going to look like. So if you have that benefit of having done that, that's great. If you're an early leader and you just got the job July 1, and now all of a sudden you're thinking on Friday, holy cow, I don't have anything for what I'm going to open, I would say you open up with your instructional leadership team, whatever that team looks like, and say, okay, what do we need? How do we balance excitement? How do we balance casting a vision? And how do we balance giving teachers time to get to work? Like, there's a lot of things on social media right now that talk about icebreakers and what do we do? And you see those comments that come back and say, give them time to work in their room. We don't need any of that kind of stuff. And as a leader, you got to balance that, because, at Churchill High School, we got 150 staff members, and I hired 30 teachers this year. So if I hired 25 or 30 every 4 or 5 years, I turn the staff over. And it's important that we get to know the people that we work with, but it's also important to value their time for what you need. So I think, if you don't have the luxury of having good people around you that can help you plan, I think you sit down and you plan out the best week possible that you can plan out. And I would say day one is an exciting day. We do a pep rally at Churchill High School. We teach the school song. We teach what to do at stuff. I mean, we got the cheerleaders, the band, the drum line. Like, it is a high energy type of day. I give a welcome. We introduce our staff, and then I let them work in their rooms on day one. Like, I would say, let them work let them go out to lunch with their staff. And then Tuesday, you kind of come back and say, okay, Tuesday here, we're going to do some breakout sessions. We're really going to look at some data. I'm going to give you time to work in your PLC. I'm going to give you time to work in your department. And then anytime that I can, I'm going to give you opportunities to work in your room. We always open up school on that Saturday before school starts. And the goal always should be, we don't need to work on Saturday before school starts, because we're going to be running a marathon throughout the whole year. But there are people that have to get up there on Saturday, and I totally understand that. So if you have the opportunity, and you're an early leader right now, and you got a couple weeks till school starts, I'd say, hey, you know what? Give your call to your math dean, your academic dean, your lead counselors, your head football coach, all those people that serve on your team, and say, okay, let's plan out this week for what do we need? What has to be done? Because the district is going to give you 10 things that have to be covered. Bloodborne pathogens is If you ever heard Todd Whitaker talk about wanting to go, give bloodborne pathogens, and then you come in next, and you'll look like the greatest speaker in the whole wide world, after that. So there are things from the district that you have to do. But teachers also, they got to set up websites, they got to set up their Google Classrooms. Like, you got to give time for that, because I don't want the first week of school you to be totally burned out. Like, I want you to leave day one at Churchill High School's back to school week energized and excited about the year to come. Like, I know where we're going to go. I know how we're going to get there. It's going to be hard work, and I'm going to have time to be able to do this throughout the year. And then after that, I would say that building principle, that first week, if you are first year on the job or 30 years on the job, that week you make sure you go to every classroom and you check in with every single teacher, and you just simply say, Darrin, what do you need? And Dom, you're a brand new teacher. Dom, I can tell you need a little bit more help. 3 o'clock, come to my office. We're going to go over all these different things. Or better yet, I'm going to come to your office or your room, and we're going to go over all these things, from how to set up your technology. Hey, have you thought about how you're going to structure your classroom? All those things that are important to do. And I think the principal going to every teacher and checking in, not just sending an email and saying, hey, if you need anything, let me know. I mean, because the person who needs it is not going to get that email read until 3 weeks after school starts. The perfect teacher is going to say, yes, I need some help because I need one more desk because 6 periods got 35. I've already, I think planning out a week that is exciting about what you have, seeking input from what do we need. And then if you don't have that option, picking up and calling central office and saying, hey, can you walk me through some of the things, like a lot of districts have like a leadership kickoff where all the leaders go to that. Can you give me a preview on what we're going to see so I can be ahead of that? And so I would say make a note first year, make a journal. It's important to journal. So I would journal in first year to say, okay, my first year, I should be planning for the August or September back to school week in May. And next year, I'm going to start in May. And if I can start in May, then we've got all these discussions and decisions made. So when the teachers leave in May or June, they've already got an idea of what Wednesday of back to school week is going to look like. So I think there's a lot of work. I think there's a lot of input that's needed on that. But if you don't have that, then I would say pick up the phone and call that other high school principal or middle school principal and say, can you share with me your back to school week? And then if needed, just copy the heck out of that back to school week, what a successful principal has done, or reach out to me or Dom or Darrin or any of us on the RTA family, and we'll share with you what we have, beg, borrow, and steal, and then craft it as you go for year 2.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I really do. I think if you're not leaning into other people who have already been there and done that can provide a little bit of support, don't feel like you got to, create the whole thing from the very beginning. I think that's huge. And definitely, I mean, you only get one opportunity to create that first impression. So if you're just starting out, create the first impression that you are there to support your staff. So make sure they have time. And I like how you talked about it on day one. Front load that time in their room early in the week, because if you don't, they're just thinking about being in their room early in the week. So just let them go and do their thing. We've kind of reached that point in the show. We kind of need to wind this thing down. Dom, it looked like you maybe had one other thing you wanted to get to, so I'm going to throw it back over to you. Let's maybe get one more little item in here on the blueprint.
Yeah, I think, listening to you, Todd, it's clear that you are a seasoned leader and veteran. Like, you know what you're doing. And I, as you were talking, I was writing down notes. Again, like I said, I'm very excited. I feel like as our friendship has grown over the last year or so, I've learned a lot from you, and I'm really excited to take the blueprint and read it. And I'm sure for those out there listening, it's definitely going to be a book you have to pick up. Here's the question I have, and a lot of what you talk about and what you've talked about is your success is kind of rooted in failure, right? And you're honest and open about talking about the mistakes that you've made. And I'm the same way. I consider myself a very reflective person. When I speak to people, I really do speak uh, to listen, and not many people do that. And, I want to hear, as a new principal stepping into a new school, I wanted to hear from my seasoned teachers that have been there, the people that are going on year 15 and 20, what Lincoln was and where they would like to see it. So I guess the last question I have for you, and I think this is important for all new leaders, and I'm sure you talk about it in the book, but How does a leader, a year one leader, accept failure and criticism and use that to then motivate themselves? Because the three of us, I think one of the things we have in common and we talked about is, Superman syndrome and the fact that, you're year one and I'm the principal and I got a big P on my chest and not, I could do what I need to do. And, I had that as a teacher as well. So what is that, Todd? Talk to us maybe a little bit about accepting that failure and maybe not only accepting it, but embracing it and turning it into a success.
Yeah, great. And I would say that even as I enter year 11 as a principal at middle school and high school, I still have that imposter syndrome that this year, I got a lot of work to do. And am I up for that? And am I the right guy for that? And so I think that drives everything that I do. And I will share this, and I document it throughout the blueprint. My first year was I got an opportunity to do it over at a different school, which made me a better leader because of the failures that I had in year one. And in year one, I was hard to accept criticism because most of us, Dom, you brought it up, and Darrin, we've been successful teachers or coaches or counselors or assistant principals. We're the guy that gets stuff done, and we're rarely criticized. We're invited to the Christmas party from the team that not all the administrators get invited to. And all of a sudden now we step into a role and people are questioning what we're doing and watching the way we handle it. And I didn't handle it well. And so I would say to any first year, second year, 11th year, you have to be good with who you are as a leader. And you have to know what your core values are, what your vision and mission statement is for you. And you have to always stick to that. And I would take it one step further. This is the most important part. You have to make sure you are right, whether that be physically, mentally, or spiritually. You have to make sure you are okay with that. Because at the end of the day, no matter what you do, there's going to be a teacher that doesn't like what you're doing. There's going to be parents that disagree with what you're doing. There's kids on my campus that, don't like what I'm doing, or I have to make, tough decisions on discipline. And as long as I have my core values and my North Star pointing in the right direction, and then when I go home, I have to be the best, most present dad and husband that I can be. And oftentimes, like when we have a tough day at work and we come home and we're, grumpy or, it never ends. And if you don't take care of yourself, whether it be through walking or running or yoga or something to do, biking, lifting weights, going to church. I started after year one reflecting in a journal to just document my decision making. And then I think ultimately at the end of the day, Dom, I think all feedback you have to take with a grain of salt, but you have to consider maybe it is you as the leader that is causing this undercurrent on the campus. And what can you do to fix that? And then if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, you know what? Here's the theme in the faculty lounge. You have to take that and figure out, am I causing this? And a lot of times in first year leaders, I think where I failed, is failing to communicate your why. Like if one of your core values is you're going to be visible and be in classrooms, you have to make sure your teachers understand this is just naturally who you are. And I told them that's what I was going to do. But then when I'm all of a sudden in classrooms and multiple times, people started to wonder what was going on. And instead of me just explaining, Dom, I just like being in classrooms. I love listening to you teach. I want to interact with kids. I want to get to know what's going on. I didn't communicate that. I felt they knew. And all of a sudden that undercurrent on the campus became X, Y, and Z. I was out to get them. There was, whatever, you fill in the blank. And so I really think one of the things is handling criticism is A, being able to reflect on it. Is it something that I caused? And then B, having some way to give, here's the best example, and I'll end it with this one. Oftentimes as administrators, we take in lots of negative stuff. And if we don't have a way to give that, get rid of that, then it eats us up. And so I'm not a picture of health, but I've started running quite a bit. Running has been the best mental health preparation for me as I prepare for what I'm doing. It allows me to be able to think about things, articulate how I'm going to handle something and how I'm going to attack it. So I would say if there's people that have resistance or if there's staff that handles negativity, have a way that you can positively, mentally take care of you. And then at the end of the day, if you have a spouse at home, make sure your spouse is taken care of. Make sure your children are taken care of. And then come into work each day ready to work and never take anything personal. Like that early leaders, I think we take the criticism personally. And I think if you can come into work that next day, and even if that teacher, if Dominic, the teacher, said, you know what, Bloomer, you're the worst principal I've ever had here. On Tuesday, when I walk by your classroom, you're in the hallway, I have to hallway conversation with you and say, Dom, how are your kids doing? You know, how are things going? And you have to be able to get to know me, and you have to be able to say, hey, he can take criticism, you know, and I want to come back. And sometimes it's following up with you. Dominic, you said that the dismissal of school is the worst you've ever seen. You've been here 15 years. What insight would you give me to make this? Because ultimately, we both want to make sure kids are dismissed safely, they get home. What suggestions would you have? So I would say one of the things is a good strategy is to bring in your critics when it comes to how you do things and asking them, hey, what is your insight to kind of go from there? So long story, I kind of rambled a little bit on it. Taking care of you, taking care of your family, and then being able to make sure that teachers don't see that your feedback is taken negatively. And it's hard because if someone raises their hand at a faculty meeting, criticizes you, all eyes are on you. And you have to look at it from the standpoint of, hey, let's have that conversation next, or that might be something we want to talk about, you know, after the meeting, please stick around. You know, and those are things that are hard to go and do. But great question. Great question.
Yeah, that really is. Man, you had me reflecting so much as you were going through all those different elements there. So much good stuff today. Man, I really appreciate this episode with you guys. Again, I said it at the top of the episode. I'll say it here at the bottom of the episode. I can't imagine a better place to be at episode 150 than hanging out with the two of you guys, talking about getting ready to kick off a new school year, talking about the launch of a new book from Todd Bloomer, The Blueprint, and just, man, the opportunity to hang with you, Todd, with you, Dom, man, it just fills my cup. It fills my heart every single month that we get to hang out. So I really appreciate you guys a lot.
Hey, it's a highlight. We talk about, Dom and I talk about it afterwards each time. It is a enjoyable moment to be able to sit and, you know, here we are getting ready for the year to start, and I'm already excited about it, talking about interacting with kids and interacting with my staff and parents and crafting that vision. And so as leaders are out there, I hope you pick up the blueprint. I hope that you read it. I hope that you get something out of it. It's great for first-year leaders. It's great for 20th year leaders in what you have. But one of the things that I hope that you will take out of that is, whether you buy the book or not, find you a group of people that energize and excite you, and either get coffee with them, or, you know, Dom's in New York, Darrin's in Nebraska, you know, I'm in Texas, you know, find a mechanism through Zoom or something that you can jump on once a month, and you can, hey, wordsmith or wordcraft, or how would you handle this type of stuff, or, you know, mentor me or coach me. I just think one of the things that really has energized me going into year 29 is knowing that I still need to have, you know, Darrin and Dom. I still need you guys in my life to help guide me, remind me that I'm doing what I'm doing, and help me and pick me up when needed. So if you're out there listening, find you a group of amigos like us and you know, get with them. I think that's been the biggest benefit over the last year of this podcast for me.
I mean, I'm at a loss for words, which, if you know me, it's very hard for me to not say anything. But I think you guys both hit it off. I mean, Todd, I'm so happy for you and proud of you, and I can't wait to read your book. And Darrin, I mean, what you've done, 150 episode, Road to Awesome, creating this family, creating this network. It means so much to me. It's made me a better leader and a better person. And I really just enjoy spending my time with both you guys. And I congratulate both of you on your successes.
Outstanding stuff. Oh man, good stuff, folks. Thank you so much for joining us here for episode 150 of the Leading Into Leadership podcast. I guess here's to the next 150 episodes of this show. Gentlemen, thank you guys so much. Everybody, thank you for joining us here on the Leading Into Leadership podcast. Get out there, have a Road to Awesome week.